The night it happened, I sat in my bedroom, staring at the thick ivory envelope that had just arrived. My father, Richard, had already committed the unthinkable. He banned my grandfather, Henry Carter, a billionaire and the man who had held our family together, from attending my younger brother Jason's wedding. That betrayal was enough to fracture us, but the letter in my hand shattered everything. Inside wasn't an invitation. It was an itemized bill totaling $4 billion, demanding Grandpa cover every extravagant detail of the wedding and honeymoon. At the bottom, in my father's sharp handwriting, were words that made my stomach twist. "Be thankful I let you contribute." My hands trembled. My father's arrogance was staggering, but what unsettled me most was Grandpa's reaction. He didn't rage. He didn't even frown. He just smiled, and that smile meant trouble none of us were ready for. I still remember the night my father made his announcement. The air in our living room felt heavy, the kind of silence that follows bad news before anyone dares to speak. Jason sat stiffly on the sofa, Victoria's hand resting smugly on his arm, while I stood near the fireplace, sensing a storm brewing. "Grandpa Henry will not be attending the wedding," my father declared, his voice sharp, final. Jason's eyes flickered with discomfort. "Dad, are you sure that's necessary?" "Necessary?" Richard snapped, slamming his hand on the armrest. "That old man will embarrass us. He doesn't understand the world Jason is marrying into. Victoria's family expects class, not an aging billionaire clinging to outdated traditions." "Oh," I felt my jaw tighten. "Dad, he's not just anyone. He's your father, Jason's grandfather. This isn't just a party, it's family." Richard's gaze shifted to me, cold and dismissive. "You wouldn't understand, Stella. Appearances matter. This wedding will define Jason's future, and Henry has no place in it." Jason lowered his head, torn between loyalty and fear. Victoria leaned closer to him and whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "Your dad is right. Imagine the gossip if your grandfather showed up uninvited." My blood boiled. "Uninvited? He raised you, Jason. He supported this family when Mom was sick, when Dad's pride got in the way of asking for help." Richard shot up from his chair, his towering figure casting a shadow across the room. "Enough. I've made my decision. Henry will not step foot in that venue." The finality in his tone hit me like a slap. Jason said nothing, his silence screaming louder than words. Victoria's lips curved into a satisfied smile. I turned to Jason, desperate. "Jason, say something. This is your wedding, not Dad's." Jason's hands clenched into fists, his knuckles white. He looked at me for a fleeting second, then at Victoria, before whispering, "Maybe. It's for the best." The words gutted me. I felt like the last thread holding this family together had just snapped. As the argument died into a tense quiet, I caught my father's reflection in the glass cabinet stern, unyielding and utterly convinced of his righteousness. But what haunted me more was the thought of Grandpa Henry, sitting alone, unaware that he had just been erased from his grandson's wedding. In that moment, something inside me hardened. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. It was about respect, about loyalty, about truth, and I silently vowed I would not let this betrayal go unanswered. A week later, another envelope arrived, thick, cream-colored, with my father's precise handwriting across the front. For a moment, hope flickered in me. Maybe, despite everything, it was a wedding invitation. Maybe Jason had come to his senses. But as I broke the seal and unfolded the pages, my breath caught. It wasn't an invitation at all. It was a bill, an itemized list so absurd it felt like parody. $2.5 billion for the Ashford Estate rental and decor. $1 billion for catering, wines, and rare delicacies flown in from Europe. $500 million for a 6-month honeymoon circling the globe. And scrawled at the bottom, in my father's unmistakable script, "Be thankful I let you contribute." I slammed the papers on the kitchen counter, my hands shaking. "Unbelievable," I muttered aloud. Grandpa Henry walked in moments later, cane tapping softly against the floor. He glanced at the scattered documents, his eyes narrowing. "What's this?" I handed him the bill. Dad's idea of an invitation. He scanned the pages quietly, his face unreadable. Jason's neat signature appeared at the bottom, alongside Victoria's looping cursive. Together, they had signed off on this demand, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I couldn't contain myself. $4 billion, Grandpa. 4 billion. And they have the audacity to act like they're doing you a favor. Henry's lips curved into the faintest smile. Interesting. Interesting. Grandpa, this is extortion. They banned you from the wedding, and now they want you to pay for it. How can you stay so calm? He set the papers down gently, folding his hands on top. Because, Stella, a storm doesn't rage when it first appears. It gathers strength quietly, and when it strikes, it leaves nothing standing. His calmness unsettled me more than anger would have. I wanted him to explode, to tear the papers in two, to call my father and unleash decades of fury. But instead, he leaned back in his chair, eyes glinting with something I couldn't yet name. Grandpa, I pressed, lowering my voice. What are you planning? He tapped the papers once with his finger. Your father has built his empire on arrogance. He thinks appearances can replace honor. This, he gestured at the bill, is his masterpiece of pride. And pride, Stella, always has a price. For the first time since Mom's death, I saw something dangerous flicker in his expression. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't weakness, it was resolve. And I realized then, my father had started a war he wasn't prepared to finish. That night, I couldn't sleep. The bill lay on my nightstand like a coiled snake, waiting to strike. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's smug handwriting. Be thankful I let you contribute. By morning, I was ready to march into Dad's office and scream. But Grandpa Henry beat me to it. He called me into his study, a room lined with mahogany shelves and books older than either of us. The smell of leather and cigar smoke hung in the air. Sit, he said softly, gesturing to the chair across from him. I dropped into it, arms folded. Grandpa, I don't understand how you can just smile. They humiliated you. They used you. And now they want you to bankroll their fantasy. Doesn't this make your blood boil? He chuckled, a low, unsettling sound. Oh, Stella, anger is a fire that burns out too quickly. I prefer storms. They take their time. They devastate everything in their path. I leaned forward, exasperated. So what? You're just going to let them get away with this? He met my eyes, his gaze sharper than I'd ever seen. Get away with it? No. But striking too soon would only feed Richard's ego. We must let him believe he has the upper hand. I blinked. So, you're planning something. Grandpa picked up the bill and smoothed the edges with his palm. Your father has built his reputation on appearances. He thinks Jason's wedding will cement his image with Victoria's wealthy family. That image is fragile. All it takes is the right pressure at the right time and it will shatter. The calm certainty in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. He wasn't bluffing, he was calculating. Grandpa? I whispered. What exactly are you going to do? He smiled faintly, as if savoring a private joke. Patience, Stella. You'll see soon enough. For now, I want you to keep your eyes open. Listen. Watch. Bring me every detail you notice about the wedding preparations. No piece of information is too small. My heart pounded. I had wanted revenge for the insult. But this felt bigger. Like watching a chess master move his first pawn. Do you trust me? He asked suddenly. I hesitated, then nodded. Always. Good, he said, sliding the papers back into their envelope. Then remember this. Arrogance is a debt. And your father has just taken out a loan he cannot repay. I sat back, stunned into silence. Grandpa wasn't angry because he didn't need to be. He already knew how this story would end. And for the first time in years, I saw him not as the frail old man Dad dismissed, but as the billionaire titan who had built an empire with nothing but grit, intelligence, and steel. My father had underestimated him. That was his first mistake. The following week, I became Grandpa's eyes and ears. He didn't need to say much, just one firm look. And I knew what to do. Mark Brennan, the wedding planner, was my first stop. His office sat on the 15th floor of a sleek glass building downtown. The kind of place where appearances mattered as much as results. I walked in, clutching the infamous envelope under my arm. The receptionist looked me over, hesitant, until Mark himself appeared tall, perfectly groomed, with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Stella Carter," he greeted smoothly. "Richard's daughter, isn't it? Please, come in." Inside, his office overflowed with swatches of fabric, seating charts, and glossy portfolios. He poured me sparkling water like I was a client, not the daughter of his most difficult customer. I set the envelope on his desk. "I think you know what this is." His smile faltered. He flipped through the papers quickly before placing them back. "Yes. Your father told me Henry Carter would be handling the payments. That's standard for families of your stature." "Oh? Standard?" I scoffed. "You do realize my father banned Henry from even attending the wedding, don't you?" Mark blinked, caught off guard. "Banned? That's surprising." He made it very clear that Mr. Carter would cover the expenses. I leaned forward, my voice low. "Let me be clear, Mr. Brennan. My grandfather isn't paying a cent, not after the way my father treated him." He shifted uncomfortably, tugging at his cufflinks. "Well, without Henry's contribution, I'm afraid the entire event is at risk. The estate, the vendors, they all require confirmed funds. The deposits your father paid only hold for so long." I allowed myself a thin smile. "Then maybe you should prepare for a storm." The words hung in the air, sharp as glass. For the first time, Mark's polished composure cracked. He scribbled a note on his pad, avoiding my gaze. By the time I left his office, I knew we had leverage. My father had built Jason's wedding on a foundation of lies and credit, gambling everything on Grandpa's silent compliance. But without that compliance, the structure was already shaking. That evening, I reported back to Grandpa. He sat in his study, stroking the silver handle of his cane as I relayed every word. "So," he murmured, eyes gleaming, "the planner himself admits the wedding is fragile." "Yes," I said, feeling a thrill run through me. "Without you, it collapses." Grandpa chuckled softly. "Then we won't need to lift a finger to destroy Richard's illusion. We'll simply watch the cracks widen and let gravity do the rest." I shivered at the calm certainty in his tone. My father thought he was in control, but the truth was clear now. He had already lost. He just didn't know it yet. It didn't take long for the whispers to begin. Lexington society was a small pond, and news of Jason's extravagant wedding plans rippled through it like a stone breaking the surface. Vendors murmured about unpaid deposits, and neighbors gossiped about how the Carters were living off Henry's money again. At the grocery store, I overheard two women near the produce aisle. $4 billion? Who even spends like that? One said. "The father banned his own dad from the wedding," the other replied. "Now they expect him to pay? It's shameful." I gripped my basket tighter, cheeks burning with a mixture of anger and grim satisfaction. My father wanted appearances, and now appearances were turning on him. That evening, I found Jason waiting on my porch. His hair was disheveled, his suit wrinkled, and his usually confident eyes darted nervously. "Stella," he began before I could even greet him. "You have to help me." I crossed my arms. "Help you? You mean help you convince Grandpa to bail you out?" He flinched at my tone but pressed on. "Please, vendors are threatening to pull out. Victoria's family is furious. Dad keeps saying Grandpa will come around, but what if he doesn't?" I stepped closer, anger rising in my chest. "What if he doesn't? Jason, he won't. Why should he? He was humiliated, cast out like some shameful secret, and now you want him to write a $4 billion check? Do you even hear yourself?" Jason ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't want to ban him. That was Dad and Victoria. I just went along with it. You know how they are." I stared at him, incredulous. "Went along with it? Jason, this is your wedding. Not Dad's, not Victoria's, yours. And you let them erase the one man who's done more for us than anyone else." His shoulders sagged. For a moment, he looked like the kid brother I used to protect, the one who'd sneak into my room during thunderstorms. But then his jaw hardened. "If Grandpa doesn't pay, everything falls apart. Stella, please, talk to him." My voice cracked, but I didn't waver. "No, Jason, you need to talk to him. You need to apologize, not beg for money. This isn't about the wedding anymore. It's about respect. And right now, you're proving you have none." He stood there, torn, his lips parted as if to argue. but no words came. Finally, he dropped his gaze, muttered something I couldn't catch, and walked away into the night. I closed the door with trembling hands, my heart aching. Jason wasn't evil, just weak, trapped between my father's pride and Victoria's ambition, but weakness had consequences, and soon, he would learn that the hard way. Upstairs, I heard Grandpa's cane tap once against the floor. He'd overheard everything. When I turned, he was already watching me from the hallway. "Good," he said simply. "The seeds are planted." The storm broke sooner than I expected. Within days, the phone at my father's office rang non-stop. Caterers demanded final payments, florists threatened to walk, and the Ashford estate manager left 3 voicemails in one afternoon, each more desperate than the last. I was in the kitchen pouring coffee when I heard Richard's booming voice through the thin walls of our house. "You dare threaten me?" he barked into the phone. "Do you know who I am? I'm Richard Carter. My father—" He caught himself, voice cracking slightly. "My father will cover everything." There was a pause. His face flushed red, veins standing out at his temples. "No refunds? Don't you dare talk to me about cancellations. I'll sue you if one chair is missing." He slammed the phone down so hard the ceramic pen holder toppled to the floor. I stepped into the doorway. "Still waiting for Grandpa to save you?" Richard spun around, eyes blazing. "This is none of your concern, Stella. Go back to whatever useless little life you live. This is business. High stakes. You wouldn't understand." I crossed my arms. "High stakes? Dad, you built this entire wedding on lies. You banned Grandpa for appearances, but now you want him to pay for those appearances. That's not business. That's hypocrisy." His voice dropped, low and dangerous. "Watch your tongue." I didn't flinch. "Or what? You'll ban me too? Add me to the growing list of people you've discarded because they don't fit your image?" Jason, who had been standing silently by the window, finally spoke. His face was pale, his voice trembling. "Dad, maybe we should just scale back. Victoria and I could—" "Scale back?" Richard roared, cutting him off. "Do you want to humiliate yourself in front of her family? Do you want them to think we're common?" Victoria, dressed in silk and scrolling on her phone, barely looked up. "My parents are expecting perfection, Richard. We can't afford to look cheap." I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Cheap? You've already sold your dignity. $4 billion for a wedding isn't luxury. It's lunacy." Richard's face contorted with rage. "You sound just like him. Always moralizing, always judging. Henry thinks money buys respect, but it doesn't. Power does, and I'll prove it." Grandpa's words echoed in my mind. Arrogance is a debt, and I could see the interest compounding on my father's face as his control slipped away. The house felt smaller that night, like the walls themselves were closing in. Richard stomped around barking orders into his phone. Jason sat hunched on the sofa with his head in his hands, and Victoria kept posting on social media, flaunting a wedding that was already crumbling. I retreated upstairs to Grandpa's study, where he was quietly polishing the silver handle of his cane. "It's starting," I whispered. He didn't look up. "Good. The higher a man builds his tower of pride, the harder it falls." I swallowed hard. Dad's losing control. He's furious, desperate. Jason's caught in the middle. My voice broke. "I almost pity them." Grandpa finally raised his eyes to mine. They were calm, steady, but unyielding. "Pity has its place, Stella. But not before justice. Let Richard taste the consequences of his choices. Only then will he understand the value of what he's thrown away." I sat down, my heart pounding with a strange mix of dread and anticipation. Outside, the night wind rattled the windows like a warning. Inside, I realized something chilling. We weren't just watching a wedding unravel. We were watching a dynasty collapse. The morning of Jason's wedding dawned gray and heavy, as if the sky itself sensed what was coming. Rain began to fall in thin streaks across my window, tapping against the glass like impatient fingers. By the time I arrived at the Ashford estate, the drizzle had become a downpour, drenching the sprawling gardens and turning the grand stone steps slick and dark. Inside, chaos reigned. Florists hauled boxes of half-wilted arrangements back into vans. Caterers argued with estate staff over unpaid balances. The string quartet, their cases closed, marched toward the door without playing a single note. Guests trickled in, umbrellas dripping, their whispers carrying like wildfire through the hall. Where are the decorations? I thought this was supposed to be the event of the year. Didn't they say the Carters were billionaires? I slipped into the main hall, heart racing. Jason stood at the front in a tailored tuxedo, his face pale, his hands trembling at his sides. Victoria, in her wedding gown, was shrieking at a makeup artist who had already packed up her kit. "This is unacceptable," Victoria snapped, mascara smudging under her eyes. "Do you know who I am?" The makeup artist gave a weary shrug. "Do you know what a contract is? No payment, no service." She walked away, leaving Victoria seething, her veil askew. Then Richard stormed into the room, tie loosened, eyes wild. "Where is Brennan?" he bellowed. "Mark, get these people back here. We have a wedding to put on." Mark Brennan, the planner, appeared at the doorway, clutching a clipboard like a shield. His voice wavered. "Mr. Carter, without the final payment, they won't stay. I've already stretched their patience beyond reason." "And event." Richard grabbed him by the arm, his face inches from the man's. "You listen to me. This wedding will happen. My father—" He cut himself off, but the words hung there, raw, desperate. "He will pay. He has to." I couldn't stay silent. "No, Dad," I said, stepping forward. My voice rang out over the murmurs of the crowd. "Grandpa won't pay. Not after what you did. You banned him, humiliated him, and treated him like a checkbook. He owes you nothing." The guests fell quiet. Heads turned. Jason's eyes widened. Victoria hissed, "Shut her up," under her breath. But no one moved. Richard's face twisted with rage. "Stella, this is not your moment. Stay out of this." But I held my ground. This was never about Jason's happiness. It was about your pride, your obsession with appearances. And now look, your pride is collapsing right in front of everyone. A crack of thunder split the air. The doors at the back of the hall swung open, and every head turned. There, framed by the storm, stood Grandpa Henry. He wore a dark suit, perfectly pressed, his silver cane glinting in the dim light. Raindrops shimmered on his shoulders like jewels. And though his face was calm, the power in his presence filled the room like a tidal wave. "Grandpa?" Jason whispered, almost inaudible. Richard's face went pale. His voice broke. "You weren't invited." Grandpa Henry smiled faintly. "Yes, Richard, I noticed." He stepped forward slowly, cane tapping against the marble. The guests parted around him like the Red Sea. "Why are you here?" Richard demanded, voice shrill now, desperation bleeding through. "To watch," Grandpa replied simply. "To see what you've built without me." He glanced around the half-decorated hall, the workers walking out, the guests whispering. His smile widened, but it was cold. It seems the foundation wasn't very strong. Victoria rushed forward, her gown dragging across the wet floor. "Mr. Carter, please, if you don't step in, our reputations will be ruined. My parents are watching. Everyone is watching." Grandpa's gaze flicked to her, dismissive. "My dear, reputations are not bought. They are earned. And right now, yours is nothing but debt." Jason stumbled toward him, his voice breaking. "Grandpa, I didn't want this. I never wanted you banned. It was Dad. It was Victoria. I just went along." Henry raised a hand, silencing him. "You are old enough to make your own choices, Jason. And when a man chooses silence in the face of wrong, he chooses cowardice." Jason flinched as if struck. Richard's fury exploded. "Enough of this sanctimonious act. You think you're better than me because of your money? Because of your empire? I don't need you, Henry. I never have." Grandpa leaned on his cane, unshaken. "And yet you built this entire day on the assumption that I would foot the bill. Tell me, Richard, what does that make you?" The silence that followed was brutal. Guests exchanged uneasy glances. Even Victoria stepped back, her face flushed with shame. Finally, Grandpa's voice rose, strong and commanding despite his years. "Let this be your lesson, Richard. Pride without respect is nothing. Wealth without gratitude is ash. You wanted to erase me from this family, and now your own arrogance has erased your wedding. And for Libre—" He gestured toward the doors. As if on cue, the last vendors wheeled their carts out into the storm. Chairs stood half empty, decorations unfinished, food untouched. The murmurs turned into open laughter. One guest whispered loudly enough for all to hear, "4 billion for this?" Richard's knees buckled. He collapsed into a chair, his hands clutching his head. Jason sank beside him, torn between loyalty and despair. Victoria stormed out, her gown dragging in the mud outside, her sobs echoing down the hall. And Grandpa? He simply turned to me, his eyes gleaming with quiet satisfaction. "Stella," he said softly, "remember this moment. This is what happens when arrogance tries to disguise itself as power." I nodded, my chest tight, my pulse racing. The storm outside howled, but inside, the true storm had already struck, and nothing would ever be the same. The rain didn't stop that night. It hammered the Ashford estate long after the guests had fled, leaving behind overturned chairs, muddy footprints, and the bitter scent of a wedding that never was. By the time I returned home, silence filled our house, an eerie, suffocating silence, as though the storm had ripped the very heart out of it. Richard was in his study, slumped at his desk, a half-empty glass of whiskey at his elbow. His shoulders sagged under a weight I had never seen before. When I stepped inside, he didn't even look up. "You think you've won, don't you?" he muttered, his voice hollow. I swallowed hard. "No, Dad. There was never anything to win. This was about respect. Something you lost the moment you banned your own father from Jason's wedding." His eyes, bloodshot and weary, finally met mine. For the first time, I saw not the tyrant who had ruled our lives, but a man broken by his own pride. "I just wanted to prove myself," he whispered. "To show the world I wasn't living in Henry's shadow." I took a shaky breath. "But you only proved that without him, everything crumbles. Pride doesn't build legacies, Dad. Integrity does." He turned away, unable to answer. That silence was louder than any argument we had ever had. Jason came to me the next day, dark circles under his eyes, his tuxedo still wrinkled from the night before. He looked like a boy again, lost and fragile. "Stella," he said, his voice breaking, "I ruined everything." I touched his shoulder gently. "No, you let Dad and Victoria speak for you, and silence is just another kind of choice." Tears welled in his eyes. "Grandpa won't forgive me." I shook my head. "He doesn't need to forgive you. You need to forgive yourself and learn from this. That's the only way forward." Later, I found Grandpa Henry in the garden behind his house. The rain had finally stopped, and golden light broke through the clouds, illuminating the roses he tended with steady hands. He looked peaceful, almost serene, as if the chaos of the last week had never touched him. "Grandpa," I said softly, "it's over." He smiled faintly. "No, Stella. It's only beginning. The family has seen the truth now. Richard can't hide behind appearances anymore. Jason will have to decide who he wants to become. And you..." He looked at me, his eyes warm but sharp. "You've proven stronger than either of them imagined." "And no." My throat tightened. "I didn't do much. You were the one who..." "No," he interrupted gently. "You stood firm. You spoke when others stayed silent. You reminded this family that money doesn't buy dignity. That is a gift more valuable than any fortune." I felt tears sting my eyes. But this time, they weren't from anger or grief. They were from relief, from pride. That evening, as the sun set and the storm clouds dissolved into pink and gold, I sat with Grandpa on the porch. The world felt different, lighter, though scars remained. Richard stayed locked away, drowning in his own shame. Jason wrestled with his regrets, a man stripped of illusions. Victoria was gone, leaving nothing but whispers of her ambition. But me? I felt stronger, not because I had destroyed their wedding, but because I had finally seen the truth. Family isn't about appearances. It isn't about money. It's about loyalty, respect, and love. Grandpa lifted his glass of tea, his voice steady. To dignity reclaimed. I raised mine to meet his. To family restored. And as we sat there together, I realized something profound. Storms may destroy, but they also clear the air, leaving behind the possibility of something new, something stronger, something real.